Hey, folks, I wanted to say Merry Christmas, and I wanted to take a little time today to talk about why we celebrate Christmas. One of my favorite ways to look at Christmas is to go back and reflect on all of the amazing things throughout history, throughout biblical history, that led to the point of Mary and Joseph walking on a road to Bethlehem because, of all things, a census had been decreed and they had to go back to their hometown. Everything that happened after that, I think we know the story pretty well. But generally, all the things that happened before, well, they're just, first of all, immense. All the things that God was doing for a people to call his own, all the things that God was doing to redeem mankind. Most of the time throughout history, the people involved, the men and women on the ground, could only see a few of those things. And they could not see all of the other things that were going on that God was doing and 100% in charge of. And oftentimes, that can be very confusing as we live our lives from day to day now, but that is still going on now. So I thought I would hit some of the high points. Several years ago, I made a slide presentation for my family, something that I wanted to do on Christmas Eve. We have typically a large family gathering where we talk about, we have a big dinner, have a big meal, and afterwards we eventually read the Christmas story. But before we did that, I wanted to do a presentation just on things that I had learned in my biblical studies and my own pursuits. I wanted to hit the high points of the history of the Bible leading up to this pivotal moment in human history. Not as pivotal as the cross and the resurrection, but well, certainly. I mean, I would honestly I'd amend that, just as important. It's part of an entire beautiful, perfect plan, the plan of the gospel. So, without further ado, let's get to it. So, in order to figure out how to best appreciate what happens in the manger in Bethlehem, I think we have to start at the beginning. We have to look at the gospel in its entirety. And so in order to do that, we have to start with creation, right? That's right. In creation, God created man. God created this earth. We were created to worship him and enjoy him forever. And then something happened. So, but initially, God was with us. So we and the earth were perfect. The meaning of harmony was first realized, was first ever thought, created in terms of our relationship with God, Adam and Eve's. But then something happened not too long after things got rolling. They had the fall of man, Genesis 3:15. At the time, I was reading the NASB, and now I'm more of an ESV guy. But hey, you know what? Everybody grows. Genesis 3:15 is actually the first gospel message that is ever spoken in the Bible. The first time it's spoken is when God looks at Eve and he looks at the serpent, or Satan, and he says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. Next, what are the high points? We have the flood. We have the corruption of mankind. We have Noah's Ark, God's judgment on the world. And then after that, we have the Tower of Babel. Now, there's a lot of stuff I'm skipping over here, but we were told to go forth and multiply, and instead, man in his wisdom apart from God, it's not really wisdom, it's folly, and his disobedience, we decided to form a superstate. Nimrod decided to be the world's first dictator. See here, there's severe supernatural demonic activity going on. Some even speculate that the Tower of Babel was actually just an astrological temple, more than it was a literal tower to heaven, if you will. More like the heavenly places referred to in the book of Ephesians, not an actual, ladder, if you will, to heaven. Then we have the call of Abraham. Praise God for the call of Abraham this Christmas. Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Next up, we have, skipping over some things, a lot of good story, but a high point, the exodus from slavery. See, back in Genesis, the favored son Joseph was sold into slavery and left for dead. God kept his promises, and descendants of Abraham flourished. Then you got a new Pharaoh, a Pharaoh who did not remember Joseph. And the foreigners were doing pretty good, very prosperous in a foreign land, and so they enslaved them. And then you have a very familiar story here for a second with Moses versus the birth of Christ. Very familiar. That we need to kill all firstborn Jewish males. But God saved Moses and had much bigger plans for him. And he kept his promise. God is a promise keeper. Skipping over, again, a lot of really good stories. We have the birth of a nation, Israel. And then we skip over some more and we get to the zenith of the kingdom, which would be the kingdom of David. Israel at its finest. God's covenant with David. The prophet Nathan told him a message from God. I will make you a great name, like the names of the great men who are on the earth. Your house and your kingdom shall endure before me forever. Your throne shall be established forever. What an incredible promise. But what does it mean? And now that the promise is known, what might some do to thwart such a promise and try to make God a liar? This is the Davidic covenant. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall rest upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and the peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever. Isaiah 9, 6 through 7. By the way, Isaiah translated into Greek 300 years before the birth of Christ. Now, I want to take a moment here and address something. I talk a lot in my professional career about government and how we should govern ourselves. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as a Christian, at heart, I'm a monarchist. I'm a monarchist who is desperately craving not only to see the king with my own eyes, but to serve him and to see his kingdom and government be fully realized, where in the Bible it says that the knowledge of the Lord is known throughout the entire world, meaning there is no dispute who's in charge. There is no dispute or other side of the story, or right, left, conservative, liberal, Democrat, whatever. There is only one truth and source of it, and that is the government that I long to see. And that's why Christmas is so important, because it's the beginning of the culmination of getting to that point. We're not there yet, but we will be. We will be. So keep in mind, Isaiah translated into Greek 300 years before the birth of Christ. Okay, now moving on. And then we have this little prophecy, Isaiah 7, 10 through 14. Then the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, Ask a sign for yourself from the Lord, your God. Make it deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord. Then he said, Listen now, O house of David. Is it too slight a thing for you to try the patience of men, that you will try the patience of my God as well? Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. Again, Isaiah, written 300 years. We found copies in the book of Isaiah, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Mm-hmm. Yep. Those that book predates, and it matches up exactly with modern copies. Well, I think it actually differed like what, four or five letters difference than what they currently had at the time when they discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then we have this little thing. I mean, look at Joseph. This is the earthly father of Jesus, not biological, but his earthly dad here, Joseph. You have David, you have Solomon. That's David's son, and isn't it interesting that Joseph is from the throne of David? Huh. And there's one little problem here. You see, in the history of Israel, I said that earlier that when David was king, that was the zenith of the kingdom. Well, it just kind of went downhill from there. I mean, there were some good kings after David. Josiah rediscovered the law, that sort of thing. But it just got to a point where the kings of the south just went from bad to worse. It got so bad that the Lord wrote Jeconiah, also known in your Bible as Coniah or Jehoiachin. This is what he says in Jeremiah 22:30. Thus saith the Lord, write ye this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days, for no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David, and ruling any more in Judah. For no man of his seed. Well, that would include Joseph, wouldn't it? And if that includes Joseph, wow. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that this was an attempt to conflict with that verse all the way in Genesis 3:15 and all those verses about the Davidic covenant? That's interesting. Seems like there was something that forces of evil didn't know, though, right? Maybe. But according to that verse, Joseph is cursed, and his seed won't be allowed to sit on the throne of David. So what are the reasons for the virgin birth? Well, I have just, this is now more of a reason for the virgin birth, by the way. This analysis here is more of a reason for why you had the virgin birth. Now, I'm not saying it's the reason. I just say, see how this all works out. I imagine some people thought that this was a way to prove God a liar. But God is awesome, and his plans for redemption are perfect, because he is the ultimate sovereign. Next. What about the house of David, though? Well, David had another son besides Solomon, and his name was Nathan. As we see in the line, according to Matthew, and then according to Luke, Nathan, eventually, his offspring have a woman named Mary, who was Jesus' mother, and a descendant from the throne of David. Which brings us to this, the Christmas story. God born of man, he became poor so we might become rich. Let us celebrate the second Adam. Let us celebrate this Christmas our King, our kinsman Redeemer, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, the Lamb slain before the foundation of the earth. Merry Christmas from me to you. God bless you who are listening to this. God bless you and your family. Thank you.